All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Triathlon Study Hall. This is episode number 8, August 25th, 2015. Let's go ahead and get rolling through some of this stuff. This is going to be a pretty good presentation tonight, especially for anybody who's looking at Ironman. The same basic principles can be applied to a half, an Olympic, and a sprint, obviously. This has just a little bit more of an Ironman focus on it this evening. So, all right, a little bit about me. For those that don't know me, my name is Ryan Reel, USAT Level 2 coach, youth and junior certified coach, master's degree in exercise physiology, biomechanics. I have another master's degree in organic and biological chemistry. USA Triathlon high performance team head coach and team director since 2011. Was with Training Bible Coaching, was one of their few elite coaches before I left earlier this year and founded Endurance Sports University. So that pretty much sums me up, and let's talk real briefly about what Endurance Sports University is. So it's an international leader in triathlon education and coaching resources and services for athletes, self-coached athletes, and for coaches. So athletes, self-coached athletes, we have everything from the membership program up to full-fledged personal coaching. And then for coaches, we have basically continuing education and a lot of other great resources for coaches out there to become better at their trade. So I want to tell you real quick about the membership program. Pretty exciting thing we started a little bit ago. It's basically designed specifically for self-coached athletes and athletes that are on a budget. It's going to basically start off with a one-on-one consultation, same basic consultation that the regular coaching clients get, and get you set up, get you rolling in the right direction. Training plan of your choice, beginner, intermediate, advanced, any race distance delivered in 4-week blocks. It's a 4-week block membership, basically. Triathlon Study Hall, so these calls right here, there's only going to be another 1 or 2 of these maybe that are going to be open to the general public. Then it's going to shut down just to members of Endurance Sports University, whether that is membership program or personal coaching. Private Facebook group with weekly accountability. It's a great forum that everybody's tending to use, having a good time on there. And then it comes with all this other stuff. So some weekly coaching tips and motivation, access to private articles, videos, MP3s. That's a pretty big one right there. That has all the full archives of the Triathlon Study Hall calls and a bunch of other really outstanding content that we have created for you guys. So that's the membership program. Again, it's a four-week commitment, 30-day notice to leave the program at any point. $49.99 for 4 weeks. If you want to try it out for a 2-week trial, no charge, go to the link that you see down there, nerdsportsuniversity.com/membership-program. Enter the discount code in MPRO-2-weeks. Get you 2 weeks for free. Then another thing that we just came out with, this isn't going to be really made public for another week or so, but you guys are here, so you get a little bit of a heads up. If you're interested in winning a Garmin Forerunner 920 XT, anyone who registers for either the 6-month or the 12-month option with the membership program, you're entered to win one of these for free. So one entry for 6 months. If you go with the 12-month option, that's one entry. Ultimately, you save about 10% with the 6-month option, and you get roughly 2 months free, about 2 months free actually, with the 12-month option. So pretty exciting. The drawing's going to take place on October 1st. So again, if you're interested in that, head over to the membership program and check that out. So, all right, the agenda for this evening, let's get into the meat and potatoes here. Short presentation, we're going to talk about the 3 keys to an Ironman race plan. All right, and this is some pretty solid stuff. Definitely works for 70.3, any other race, Olympic, sprint, whatever it is. And then we're going to open it up to questions and answers. So let's go ahead and get rolling into this. So the 3 keys, first one is going to be the cycling leg, right? And I will get into this. I will get into all 3 of these a lot more. But the cycling leg and our plan for that is one of, if not the most important parts of what we're going to do on race day. Second one, nutrition plan. That anyone who's done an Ironman or been around somebody who has done an Ironman, you definitely know, hey, nutrition is a big deal. So we're going to talk about that real briefly. And then a success formula that I have that I want to make sure that everybody who is not an existing member of Endurance Sports University gets to see and hear from me, because it's definitely a solid mathematical formula, and it definitely gets results. So, all right, let's get into it here. So the cycling leg of an Ironman, and how are we going to develop or put this into a race plan? All right, so the bike leg is absolutely the longest leg of the race, regardless of the distance that you're doing. In the context of Ironman, it's 112 miles, right? So that's going to be anywhere from 4.5 to 8.5 hours, depending on the athlete. That is where you are going to really have the most opportunity to do well or to do something that could harm you later on in the race. It can and it will make or break your race. Right? If you have a good solid bike plan and you execute it, you are set up for success on the run and then your ultimate at the end of the day race. If you do not have a bike plan and you're going out to wing it, well, you're winging it. If you have a bike plan that's laid out and it's a really bad one, it's going to hurt you, right? It's not going to hit you. Unless you're doing something really ridiculous on the bicycle, you're going to get through the 112 miles. That's not going to be an issue for somebody who's trained for an Ironman. Problem's going to kick in where you get to about mile 8 or 9, maybe 14, 15, 16 of the marathon. That's when it's going to hit you in the back of the head, right? So keep that in mind. So the main point of what we're going to get into here is using technology to develop a race plan. There's a tremendous amount of exercise science that's been out there for quite a while, but it has not always been very accessible by non-scientists, right? Okay, great, VO2 max, yay. How do I actually do that? Well, we have heart rate monitors, we have power meters, we have GPS devices and accelerometers and all this stuff now that provides us with the data that we are generating while training and while racing, and is going to allow us to analyze that using exercise science to make sure we're on the right track, getting the most out of our training, monitoring fatigue, monitoring fitness, monitoring race readiness, all that good stuff. So the technology to develop the race plan, absolutely huge, right? So with cycling technology, it's now available to athletes of all ages and abilities, and it's at a reasonable price point. It really is, and that's what's outstanding about this. So power meter, right now they're going about $7.99 and up. That is looking at PowerTap, Garmin PowerTap. They're about $7.99 and up. I know there's some other models out there that are pretty good. I know that there's other models. So check out something. If you don't have a power meter, I'm going to pretty much lay out for you why, if you're doing an Ironman or a half Ironman or even an Olympic distance event, you're going to really want a power meter. All right. So power meter technology, absolutely outstanding. Then, of course, we have the heart rate monitor, which is better than nothing. All right. So real brief about that. We have different types of metrics. Okay. We have input metrics and we have output metrics. All right. And an output metric is what it says, right? It's what you are putting out as an athlete. Right? And on the bicycle, power meter is the only thing that is going to accurately measure your output. Right? We can't use speed. We can't use cadence. Right? We don't want to use those because that is terrain and weather dependent. Right? So the power meter, that is measuring the amount of force you're applying to the pedal, and it's measuring it in watts. Right? So that is an output. Outputs generate inputs, right? Because an input is doing something from data that it is inputting. Heart rate is an input metric, right? It is not an output metric. Heart rate is a function of how hard you're going on the bicycle, which is measured by the power meter in watts, which is the output, right? So that's why a heart rate monitor, better than nothing. Is it as good as a power meter? No, not even on a bad day. Unless the batteries die, then the heart rate monitor is more valuable. All right, so a little bit about the technology. Let's take a look at how we can actually leverage that to take advantage of exercise science. Right. So the big thing that we are going to use to develop the race plan, to execute the race plan, we're going to use it to make sure that we can actually execute the race plan before we show up on race day. We're going to use it to measure fatigue, fitness, race readiness. This is one of the, if not the most important metric available to triathletes, right? Training stress score, or TSS. That's where the money's made right there. Right? So the equation that you see that just popped up, that's the equation for training stress score. And what that is ultimately doing is measuring how hard a session was, whether it's a training session, whether it's a race, whether it's the bike section of a race. That's what it's measuring. What's the training stress that has been applied to you, right? So TSS, training stress score. Where we have seconds up here, this is the amount of time of the given session in seconds. NP is normalized power. So remember, normalized power is different than average power. Normalized power is what the power output would have been if you had pedaled smoothly the entire time. Right? Another way to look at it, they remove all the zeros. Right? Anytime that you're spending coasting, or that you're spending sitting at a stoplight or a stop sign or stopped at a gas station, whatever it is, it chops those out. Right? So it's a far more accurate representation of the physiological demands of the race. Then we have intensity factor, and that is your normalized power for the session divided by your FTP, right? And FTP, remember, functional threshold power. That's down here in the denominator, and then 3,600 is the number of seconds in a minute, or sorry, in an hour. Okay, we multiply all that by 100 to put it into a nice round number, and that's what we're looking at. Right. So this is the metric that we're going to use to really develop a cycling race plan. All right. So goal training stress scores for race day. Right. Each of the main three events, so Ironman, half Ironman, and Olympic distance, each have goal ranges for a training stress score. And what these ranges are going to do is they're going to give you the best bet to have the best run you can on that day, right? So it's taking into account, if we remember the training stress score equation, it takes into account not only the time or the volume, but it's also taking into account the intensity, right? So it's taking a lot of stuff into account. So on race day, if you're doing an Ironman, we ideally want that training stress score to be somewhere between 260 and 290. If it's any under 260, you probably left too much out there. You could have ridden harder. If you're over 290, probably rode too hard, and it's going to start taking it out of you on the run. Right now, that being said, all athletes are different, right? But these are some good general ranges for you to take a look at. And the next one is the Ironman 70.3. We want that between 160 and 190. And then the Olympic distance somewhere between 90 and 100, right? So these are the goals or goal ranges for training stress score on race day. All right. And those of you that are working with me in the personal coaching realm, we've gone through the matrix to, develop this race plan and really determine exactly what it is that we're wanting you to do on race day. And then as you have seen or are currently seeing, we go through the training to make sure we can execute that. All right. So let's take a look at the equation and make sure we understand, or you guys understand, how to manipulate it and how to use this. All right. So this is the equation, right? Pretty straightforward. If I do some math, right, what I can do, if I look at intensity factor, right, I know that in and of itself is an equation. I know that normalized power, etc. Right. So when I do a bunch of math and chop this all the way down, I basically can get it to look like this. The training stress score is equal to the intensity factor squared multiplied by time multiplied by 100. Now, this is a little bit different. This time is in hours, and it needs to be in a decimal place or decimal point. All right. So if you're going to ride 6 hours, it's 6.0. If you're going to ride 6.5 hours, it's 6.5. If your goal is 6 hours and 50 minutes, right? You got to divide 50 by 60. That's going to give you the decimal place, right? So then it's 6 and whatever the decimals are, right? So that's the one caveat to this. So this equation is a lot more simple, right? So when we're going to lay out a race plan, what we're going to know ahead of time is, all right, the athlete that I'm working with is a very strong, proven Ironman athlete. They are running, they've done a bunch of Ironman. We can go a little higher in that range, up, from between 260 to 290. We can get up maybe into the high 270s, 280s. Okay. If we have an athlete who is a proven strong runner at Ironman, right? So a guy who's running 330 or less, a girl who's running 345 or less, let's say, anyone who's doing that off the bike, right? Now we can push that up maybe even a little bit more, right? But again, this is stuff that you need to pick a point in that range that makes sense, because ultimately you're going to go out and test this and you're going to see, can I even ride at that intensity for 112 miles? And then once you can do that, okay, now can I run off the bike, right? That's the big question, because you ride for show, you run for dough, right? So that's an old golf saying, you drive for show and you putt for dough. Triathlon, you ride for show, looks really cool when you're the fastest bike split in Kona or whatever Ironman race it is, but if you can't run, you don't win the money. Very simple. All right, so looking at this equation, if we know, all right, I want to have a TSS of something between 260 and 290, I know that my goal is to ride the 112 miles in 6 hours, right? I now know two of the three variables. I can do some simple algebra and solve for intensity factor, right? And once I do that, then I can determine what does my normalized power need to be, right? So let's take a look at that. And once we rearrange it, this is what we're going to get right here. So training stress score divided by the time in a decimal point multiplied by 100. That number we take the square root of. That's the intensity factor, right? And remember, intensity factor is going to be somewhere between 0.5 and I guess it can go up to 1.2 maybe. In an Ironman, you're going to be a decimal point. You're going to be under the number 1. It's going to be 0 point something. All right, so let's go through a quick example of this. Let's say that your goal is, I want to ride the 112 miles, I want to ride it in 6:30, and I want a TSS of 275. All right, so if you know that data, you can determine how hard from a power output standpoint do I need to ride. Right, so if we take a look at this exact same equation, I fill in the data, right? So I have a TSS of 275. I want to ride it in 6.5 hours. So 6.5 times 100 is 650. So I take 275 divided by 650, and then I take the square root of that number. What that does, it gives me an intensity factor of 0.65, right? So what that boils down to is that's 65% of FTP, but using normalized power, right? That's the big thing. And keep this in mind. All the nifty cycling computers you guys and gals have out there, the Garmin's and the Joules and all that funky stuff where you can put, 37,000 different screens on the front, on one view of it, which is not true. You normally get about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, depending on the model. Normalized power is a metric that you can and should put on that cycling computer, because that's something that you want to see on race day, and I'm going to show you why you're going to want to see it. All right, so everybody follows me with the math. Let's take a look at how this shakes out, right? So if we know that we need an intensity factor of 0.65, we can determine what normalized power that is, right? So if we know the intensity factor is equal to normalized power divided by FTP, I know intensity factor, I know my FTP. If I simply multiply each side by FTP, it cancels it out on the right, adds it to the left, so now it's FTP times intensity factor, gives you your normalized power, right? Remember, that's a percentage of FTP, right? So that's the gist of it. So with that, all right, I want to ride it in 6 hours and 30 minutes. You can do the math and figure out I need to have an average speed of whatever it is, okay, 18, 19 miles an hour, somewhere in between those two numbers. So if you know that, and you know that if you multiply your FTP times the intensity factor you want to ride at, that's the normalized power you need to ride at. Is that a pretty solid bike plan? I would say it doesn't get much better than that at this point. All right, so that's point number one. One of the 3 keys for Ironman. You got to have a solid bike plan. You absolutely do. Unfortunately, it requires a power meter, right? And those of you that have heard me talk before or have worked with me previously or are working with me right now, you've heard me say using a power meter in Ironman is legalized cheating. And this is why, right? This removes all of the mystery about, hey, so how hard do I need to ride, right? This answers that question, and it does it using science, and it does it using technology, which is absolutely outstanding. So for those of you that are going, well, that's awesome, I only have a heart rate monitor, I'm going to hook you up if you want. I'm going to give you a really nice solid discount to either Garmin or PowerTap. If you're interested in 15 to 20% off, it's going to depend on the model that you're wanting. Shoot me an email after the study hall call is over. Send me an email tomorrow. Hit me up at info@endurancesportsuniversity.com. Let me know what you're interested in. I'll get you a price. And if you're interested, you got a power meter at a discount, right? Or the other option that you have, which is not on the slides, if you buy a power meter, you get free coaching. Or if you sign up for 12 months of coaching, you get a free power meter, right? So if any of that sounds interesting, shoot me an email, info@endurancesportsuniversity.com, and I'll get you more info. So there's number one, the bike plan. That's absolutely huge. If we don't have that figured out, we're winging it, right? Would you want to go into an Ironman and wing it? I wouldn't want to, all right? So second biggest thing, it's the nutrition plan, all right? So nutrition is considered to be the 4th discipline of Ironman. It obviously is very essential that you get this right on race day if you want to achieve your goals, all right? So I'm not going to go into you should have X number of grams per kilogram or this number of kcals per kilogram body weight. That's going to be a separate presentation coming down the road. But in general, if you have no clue what you're doing with nutrition, by all means, please shoot me an email. Again, info@Endurance Sports University. Hit me up there, and I'll try to get you some basic guidelines. All right. So those of you that have an idea, you've been there, you've done that, hey, I better get this right. Whether it's an Ironman, whether it's a half Ironman, right? You better have it right. An Olympic distance event, human body can go for about 2 hours without having to have additional carbs or additional fuel added in. All right. So Olympic distance people, you drink a bottle of sports drink on the bike, you're going to be fine. All right. You can add into that if you want, but That's pretty straightforward. So in terms of the Ironman and the half Ironman, you're looking at somewhere between maybe 100 to 250 calories an hour, and 250 is really kind of getting up there on the high side. I definitely would not go more than 300 calories an hour, but having a plan for the nutrition is just as important as having a plan for the bike, right? If you show up on race morning and you have all your bottles that are loaded up with frozen this and ice water that, and you got all your nutrition, and you get into transition and you got 2 bikes on the frame, you got your aero container in between the aero bars, you got 2 water bottles on the back, you're fully loaded, you're ready to go to war, as it may be, right? If you don't have a plan for how that's going into your body, you're winging it. And if you're winging it, you can get away with it on the bicycle. You can get away with screwing up your nutrition on the bicycle. You're not going to get away with it in the marathon. It's absolutely not going to happen. So you have to have a plan. I am going to have 2 water bottles on my bike that have the Infinite sports drink in it. There's 200 calories per bottle, and I'm going to drink 1 bottle of that per hour. That's all the nutrition I'm taking in. That's a perfectly valid option, but you got to know that, right? And once you know what that is, and it can be any combination, sports drinks, it can be gels, chews, bars, regular food, it can be candy bars, whatever it is, you got to have a plan, right? So how do we develop the plan? You have to test it. You have to get your butt out on the Mr. Bicycle or Mrs. Bicycle. You got to ride it up and down the road. You got to do that for 4 or 5, 6 hours, just like you're going to on race day. You got to make sure the nutrition plan works. All right, so I got 2 quick stories for you about this whole nutrition thing in Ironman. All right, the first one is, if the person didn't have a very precise plan with what they were going to do with the calories in the bottle, so they just kind of haphazardly threw all this stuff in there, they were able to get through the bike, right? But they ended up realizing halfway through the bicycle, I'm running out of energy. I'm having a big giant mess. And they ultimately ended up, over the last probably quarter of the bike ride, trying to get all their nutrition in. And when they did that, when you dump a whole bunch of stuff into your stomach, it's going to make your stomach upset, right? There's a limited amount of food, nutrition, goo, gels, whatever it is, that your stomach can digest, right? You overload that thing, it's going to shut down, right? And we know that's a far larger problem in Ironman, right? And the second, and probably the most heartbreaking story I got for you with this, is there was a young lady I was coaching back when I lived in Chicago, and she was getting ready to do her first Ironman. I think she was 20 years old at the time, and she was going to do Ironman Wisconsin. All right, so her training goes exceptionally well. Everything is great. I sit down with her and her mom the night before the race and say, let's go over the nutrition plan one more time. So we go over the entire thing one more time, lay it out, literally set timers on her Garmin watch, and had it all set out. She understood every single part of it. She goes out on race day, gets out of the water, and is first out of the water in her age group. Gets onto the bicycle and just starts laying the wood to everybody in her age group on the bike. She got off the bicycle with roughly a 1 hour lead going into the marathon. Problem is, she was so happy with how her race was going, and she was so focused on riding the bicycle, she didn't follow the nutrition plan. She got to roughly mile 70, mile 75, somewhere in there on the Ironman Wisconsin course, and she realized, yeah, I've had 1 bottle of nutrition, and I've had 1 bar and 1 gel 70 miles into this, and this is a 200 calorie bottle of Infinite or whatever it was she was using. So she's a smart woman. You know, she was getting her undergrad degree in exercise science and all that, so she knows the nutrition, she knew everything, and she just simply made a mistake, and that happens. Right? So what she did is she looked at it, she goes, if I chug all this stuff, I'm going to have a bigger problem. So she didn't do that, right? But what she tried to do was just start getting that stuff back into her system. And the problem was, she dug such a large hole by riding 70 miles with 300 calories, maybe, in her system, maybe 350, that she got off the bike. She had something like an hour and 2-minute lead, right? So this is pretty much get through the marathon and you're going to Kona, right? She made it to about mile 3 before she started walking, and she made it to about mile 5 before she started vomiting all over the place. She ultimately finished third in her age group, lost the Kona spot by about 15 minutes, right? So nutrition, what's the point of this, right? Nutrition is absolutely essential. We have to know what can you take in and how much of it do you want and or need to take in, right? And then you have to execute that plan on race day. There is no other way around that, right? You got to rehearse it and you got to execute it, right? So there's number 2 with nutrition. The third one is the success formula, right? And this is more of a bigger picture sports psychology thing, right? What everybody wants, whether they have a coach, whether they have been coaching themselves forever, whether they bought a plan online, or whether they're like, I think I'm going to go swim, bike, and run a little bit today. They are doing that to get a result, right? That result can be, I want to finish my first triathlon, I want to finish my first Ironman, I want to go to Kona, I want to be a world champion. Whatever it is, everybody has a result they are chasing after. That's why we get out of bed at some ridiculous hour. That's why we get done with work and go get in a pool or go get a ride or a run or whatever it is. We're all seeking results. That is what, at the end of the day, just about every single thing we do in life, we're looking for results, right? So the formula is results. That is the product of, or that equals the process plus execution, right? So process starts on day number 1, right? What's my race plan? How long do I want to take to ride the Ironman bike course? And you go through the process that I showed you, I laid out for you, and you have a bike plan. You now are going to need to test that. You're going to need to verify you can do it. You're going to need to verify you can run off the bike and all that stuff, right? That is super duper important. But that's one part of the process, right? All of training, that's the process, right? So all the swim workouts, all the bike workouts, all the run workouts, all the yoga, all the Pilates, all the core work, all the foam rolling, all the massage, all the healthy food, all of the skipped fast food, all the beers you didn't drink, all of that, that's the process, right? And that takes time, right? So those of you that are on here that have done an Ironman, I'm pretty sure none of you have gone, yeah, it's 3 weeks out from an Ironman. I think we're good. Let's give it a roll. Yeah, no, the process takes more than 3 weeks, right? So you got to let the process take its place, right? Part of the process, got to have a plan on the bike. You got to have a nutrition plan, right? Everything else, right? From there, you can execute that process perfectly. That process can take 12 weeks, 15 weeks, 16 weeks, 20 weeks, 24 weeks, whatever it is. You nail every single workout exactly as the coach has it. That's awesome. That's half the equation. You're halfway to getting the results, right? Because now on race day, you have to execute. If you can't execute your race plan, you will not get the results. Your process could be perfect. If you execute like an idiot, your results are going to suck, right? And that's the bottom line, right? So what does execution mean? Execution means taking that race plan, which is the all-encompassing it has. What am I doing on the swim? What am I doing in T1, bike, T2, run? And what am I doing for nutrition for the entire day? All of that is in the race plan. That is all you have to execute on race day. And if your training is well written, if it's well thought out, and it's using the science and the technology like what we talked about earlier, you just got to simply go out and execute. There isn't going to be a big mystery about, I wonder, what I'm going to ride today. Your answer is going to be, no, I'm going to ride 630 because I'm going to ride at this power output for normalized power. I'm going to have that average speed. Thank you. Done. Just got to execute. Right? So having that plan, knowing that it can work, and then simply executing. That's how you get results, right? So those are your 3 keys to an Ironman. You have a bike plan, and that is going to take care of 112 of the 140.6 miles. It's going to set you up to have the best run that you can, and it's something that is incredibly executable, right? There is not a lot of ambiguity going on there, right? So those of you who don't have a power meter, info at endurancesportsuniversity.com. We'll try to get you hooked up. All right. So second part, nutrition. If your nutrition sucks, it's going to catch up with you on the run. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. Right. And then from there, let the process take its course. Right. It takes time to prepare for an event. Then execute the race plan. Very simple. Very, very simple. So, all right, guys, real quick reminder, If you want to take a look at the M Pro, the membership program, 6 month or 12-month option gets you into a giveaway drawing for the 920 XT. And next triathlon study hall call, next one on Tuesday, September 1st. That will be open to the public. Maybe one more after that. But if you like the calls, if you want to be able to get a little bit of info every Tuesday night, and then have any questions you have answered, get them answered, get into the Facebook group. Maybe you do or don't need a training program, whatever it is. Try out the membership program. Use that discount code at the bottom, MPRO-2-weeks. We'll get you 2 weeks for free. You got plenty of time right now. Try out the 2 weeks. If you like it, great. Go for the 6 month or the 12-month. If you don't like it, then you cancel, and no big deal. So, all right, guys, that is the presentation. So let's go ahead and pop in whatever questions you have, and I'll go ahead and work my way through these. Lisa, can you hear me?
Hi there, how are you?
I'm good. How are you this evening? You there?
Basically based upon what we figured out yesterday,
Mhm.
I wanted to know if you could explain running lactate threshold, the VLT,
Mhm.
and what it means to improve by a minute. What is
Absolutely.
that all about?
Great
Because
question. Okay, good. All right, so let me go and answer. All right, so what Lisa's talking about is she did a run test this past weekend, and we needed to update her training zones. Right. So with running, we still have output and input metrics. Output being speed. Right. What is your running velocity? Right. That is what you're putting out. Right. Heart rate again is an input metric. Right. So same thing as cycling. All right. So what we did is we had her do a 1 mile run test on the track. She ultimately did it on a treadmill, which she has become incredibly proficient at. Um, and we took that time, dumped it into the Macmillan Run Calculator, and that pops out a VLT, right? So lowercase v, capital L, capital T, right? And that's the metric that Lisa is asking about right now. And what is that? Why do we care? And what does it mean that I have improved by how much I improved by, right? So let's go through that. It's a great question. So lactate threshold, we know what that is, right? LT stands for lactate threshold. So that is the most basic terms, the point at which your body is producing more lactic acid or blood lactate than it can clear. Right. So we know that in cycling we have functional threshold power. Right. So the T for threshold, functional meaning what we're actually doing, meaning pushing the pedals, power meaning we're measuring power. Right. When we're talking about running, we can also talk about FTP, which is functional threshold pace. Right. That is the same thing as VLT, right? So a lowercase v and then a capital L and a capital T. So the velocity at lactate threshold or functional threshold pace. Same thing. Okay. So what that is, we know with the bike, we do an FTP test, we do a 20-minute time trial or 2 x 8 or whatever it is. We take a percentage of it and we say that's your power output at lactate threshold, right? What we're going to do is we're using the run test in order to determine what is my running velocity, how many minute per mile, what's my pace at lactate threshold. So that's what the VLT is, right? It's the output metric used for running, right? So now Lisa in particular, the last real solid run test we did, her VLT came back. I want to say it was somewhere around uh, 912, something like that. And then the test she just did on Saturday came back at like 814, something like that. So she cut off nearly a full minute off of her pace at lactate threshold, right? So if we take a look at that, right, and we say, all right, we got 8 minutes. Well, let's just say that it's 8 minutes and 9 minutes. We got roughly a 1 minute discrepancy there. So if we look at the percentage increase in her velocity at lactate threshold, that's roughly a 12% increase. That is absolutely outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. If somebody goes through a training period and they have a 12% increase in their FTP, they would be like, yeah, cha-ching, right? That's if your FTP is 200 and we bump that up 12%. Your FTP just went from 200 to 224. Who would take that on this call? Everybody times two, right? So same thing on the run. So Lisa, absolutely outstanding results came back from you, and you freaking nailed it. So does that answer your question? Good question, Greg. So Greg asked, so Greg and I are working together towards Hireman, Arizona. His question is, as we get closer to race day, we help me dial in nutrition on race day. Yes, Greg, absolutely. Just start keeping track of what you're doing, and let's see what works, and we'll discuss that on our next coaching call and make sure that we have it dialed in. But ultimately, you're going to have to keep a relatively accurate journal of what you've put in your system, while doing the longer stuff on the weekends, the bricks and that type of stuff. And then we'll just get it dialed in, man. So yeah, great question. Great question. Absolutely. All right. We got Lisa. All right, Lisa, I'm going to bring you back on, primarily because I'm not sure what you're asking me. All right, Lisa, what's your question?
Hi again. All right. My question is, how involved do you prefer your athletes to be in so far as the science of this is concerned? Do you want us to really be looking at things like training stress score and all of those numbers, or I don't know if I'm making sense. Would you prefer us to just follow the plan and not be so focused on the numbers? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
absolutely, absolutely. That's really athlete dependent. My personal preference, it doesn't make a difference to me. It's the training is going to do what it's supposed to do. And, I've been doing this long enough that I know what the numbers are going to be, plus or minus 5 or 10. So it's something that I know there's not a lot of mystery in this, right? It's using the numbers that come back to make sure that we are on track is obviously a huge thing. But, my someone who has the ability to understand the science and understand the technology and how those two can start working together, there isn't a lot of mystery on what's going on. So on my end, the only time I'm going to really care is if somebody is using the science and looking at things and it's making them crazy, right? Because they're looking at the numbers and they had a bad session, or they think that this should be higher or this should be lower or whatever it may be. That's about the only time where I'm going to tell somebody, hey, just stop. You're not helping yourself. You're making yourself
Right.
miserable doing this. I would say, at the end of the day, my ability to do all of this for athletes is why I have a job. So it's someone who's going to come hire me to, work one-on-one and do the personal coaching thing. This is from the training perspective, from the triathlon coach perspective. That's the job, writing the training so that it's accounting for the science and using and leveraging the technology for it. So if somebody, says, hey, explain all this to me, I want to know it, outstanding. I'll do that. If they're like, I don't care why I'm doing it, just keep making me faster. And we're going to do that too. So that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. And I guess it would just be really important when you say stay in zone 1, 2 for a run that we know what zone 1, 2 is and we stay in it.
Yep.
I guess that's as far as this into the sciences I'm going to get, I suppose.
And that's all that any athlete needs to do. Go out and execute the training plan. I have
Yeah.
another client who's I'd worked with previously, and we'd had a lot of success, and then stopped having as much success. And she came back and said, "All right, I want to start working together again, and I want to do such and such a race." And the condition that I gave her was, I'll work with you again, but you're just simply going to do what I'm going to tell you to do. We're not going to debate the workout, and we're not going to debate the numbers, and we're not going to do that. You're simply, she's the type of person that the science and the numbers will get into her head. So, that was not an easy pill for her to swallow, but she said, okay, sure. And she is killing it right now. Absolutely killing it. I don't think she's been racing this fast in the last few years, quite frankly. She spent a little bit of time injured, but I mean, at this point, she is fully healthy, fully back to training, and at least as fast as she was before she got injured. And that's all in about 5 weeks worth of working together. So it's just get out and execute the training. It's a process. That's all it is. So, that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thanks, Ryan.
You're welcome, Lisa. All right, guys, thanks for coming out for the study hall session this evening. I had a ton of fun talking a little bit about Ironman and some keys to making sure we're getting the biggest bang for our buck out there on race day and definitely in training. So remember, if you want to try out that membership program, discount code's right there, MPro-2-weeks. Give it a shot, see if you like it. Only another one or two of these calls is going to be open to the public. Then they're going to be reserved only for the ESU members. Remember, if you like it a lot, the 6 or 12 month option gets you entered in to win a Garmin. So, all right, guys, take it easy, and I will see you next week.